Welcome. I'm Mary Ellen Watts Poole, and I'm excited to be your host today for the Southport Historical Society's celebration of Southport Christmas Past, an old-fashioned Southport Christmas. This year we could not have our annual tour of homes, so we've decided to have a different type of celebration for you. We hope that you love it as much as we love putting it together for you.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire, Jack Frost nipping at your nose, Yuletide carols being sung by a choir, and folks dressed up like Eskimos.
Hello, everyone. Merry Christmas. My name is Mike Royal. Some years ago, I wrote a localized piece, which was an adaptation of The Night Before Christmas. And I wrote this with my grandchildren in mind. I wanted to have something that could tie in The Night Before Christmas with some of the localized memories of landmarks and different things that I remembered as a child growing up in Southport. It's called A Smithville Christmas, and as most of you know, Smithville was the original name of Southport. And so with that, I'll begin A Smithville Christmas. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all down the docks, the skippers were checking and doubling their knots. When all was secure and their boats put to bed, they were ready for family, their boots soon to shed. The weather was nice, with just a slight chill, and all was at peace in the town of Smithville. But during the night, as old Baldy did scan, an object was spotted in the light as it ran. It seemed so impossible as they came into view, but there in the channel, 8 tiny tugs cruised. They motored and hummed with their engines full steam as they pulled a big barge of toys and dreams. The buoys all parted and blinked as they passed, some red and some green as they gave a bright flash. They arched around Jaybird and pointed towards land and began to make noise like a full brass band. The people were all sleeping in Smithville that night and awoke to the horns now blasting delight. The sound was familiar as a carol was played. It was merry, it was soothing as they listened and swayed. There, a brightly lit cedar, a legend of lore, like a beacon it guided them straight to the shore. They sailed to the pier at the foot of Old Howe, where a jolly little man stood straight on the bow. His face was a circle of smoke from his pipe, and it glowed with the spray from a rough sea swipe. The townspeople gathered at the river to gaze as the little jolly pilot eased the barge into place. He began calling out to his crew on the barge, commanding such order, they know who's in charge. Gifts were given to one and to all for the children of Smithville, some big and some small. A present each got until there were none. To his crew he exclaimed, "That's a job well done." With the help of townfolk, they cast off with a cheer, and he pulled the barge back down the Cape Fear. With his task now completed and smiles all around, he sailed the barge out and straight for the Sound. We heard the pilot yell as they went out of sight, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night." And Merry Christmas to all of you, and you have a good night.
Good morning. My name is Ginger Harper, and I am the daughter-in-law of Margaret Taylor Harper and the wife of James M. Harper III, who was the photographer for the Stateport Pilot for many years. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the history regarding the Holiday House. This event was organized by the Southport Women's Club, who met once a month to plan the different things that they could do to enhance living in Southport. This is the time of the year when the ladies in the Southport Women's Club would get together and decorate Southport's old community building with all of the beautiful Christmas arrangements that they could create and display for others to enjoy. Talking about this was a wonderful reason for me to reach out to friends in the Southport Women's Club and do some reminiscing with them. One special lady that I talked with was Gibby Wilson. She was very much involved with setting up the holiday house and with all the planning and organizing, and went on to be the holiday house was ready for the doors to be opened to the public. It was exciting time for everyone. I think that the purpose of the holiday house was to give ideas to others in the community on how they could decorate their own homes for Christmas. One of the successes that grew out of this labor of love was putting into creating all the elaborate decorations that could be used on the mantles and in the fireplace and around the doors, on the tables and the different trees and things like that. Another special lady that I reached out to was Trudy Huffam Young. She described the holiday house as it was in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. These ladies would decorate the tables with lovely greenery, holiday greenery with colored ornaments and lights, and anything that they could think of to use to make the rooms festive. They did many trees and the mantles to show the community what can be done in their own homes. And I think this was just such a great way to do this. They would use shells and feathers and colored glasses and orbs, cranberries and greenery of cedar and pine, and even straw to fashion little straw ornaments to be used on the tree. Besides the decorations, the ladies offered punches, of which I have one of the recipes, with cakes and cookies and candies. And one of the favorite specialties back then was the cream cheese and cucumber sandwiches, of course, with cut into quarters and then with the crust cut off, of course. They even had entertainment. They had the C Notes Choral Society to perform many concerts for us to enjoy. They had Trinity Methodist Church, the Baptist Church, and their choral societies or their choirs to perform for us. And it was just a fun time to be had by all. Some of the musicians that would play would do guitars and violins and trumpets and saxophones. And it was just nice to get this talent, this local talent for us all to sing along with the music that they made. Dr. Conrad was always a favorite. He was a local dentist that often played the carols and we would sing to those carols. I remember vividly the year that the Women's Club created a poinsettia tree in the middle of the room. It was one of the most gorgeous things that I think I'd ever seen. There must have been over 100 poinsettias making up the tree, and it stood about 10 feet tall right in the center of the room. The ladies in the Women's Club worked for months on end creating and planning and organizing the community building for this one event. It was free for the public. They wanted all to come and share, all visitors, locals, anyone that came in, they wanted to be able to show what they had done. Here are the little dancers doing the Nutcracker Suite. Our children would go to the dance classes and learn these steps, and then a small portion of the Nutcracker would be performed. Then you've got the beautiful Christmas tree decorations. The first tree that you see over there is decorated with ornaments from pins or necklaces or things like that, made up of beads and baubles. And of course, the Christmas tree at the top middle looks to me like it's got some popcorn on it. And that was always fun to sit around with the children and string popcorn or cranberries for the trees. And I think on the bottom picture there's the straw tree, of which I have some of the ornaments that Jimmy's mama would put up on one of the trees for the holiday house. This all came to an abrupt end when the community building burned to the ground in January of 1995. I think it would be so nice if we could revive some of these traditions that were a part of our community back in that time period. Let's think about it. Maybe we could do something next year. Hope you have a great day.
Hello and welcome to our virtual Christmas show today from the Historical Society. I'm Pat Kirkman and I will be reading for you today an article that was written by Susie Carson, and this was back in 1996 that Susie wrote this. Susie has now passed away. She left us in 2008. But this is a significant year for Susie because it's her 100th birthday year. Susie was born in 1920 in Supply, but she always told us that she was happy to report that they moved to Southport the first year of her life. So actually she claimed to be a Southportian for all of her lifetime. Many of you out there will probably know Susie, who she was, or have known her, or have heard about her reputation. She was just a good old home girl lady who loved history and made it a lifetime pursuit of hers to learn as much as she could about the history of Southport, and also to be one of the founding mothers of our 44-year-old Southport Historical Society. So we owe a lot to Susie. We have a lot of her archives, things that she saved through the years, and one of them being this delightful article that she wrote, A Southport Christmas During the Great Depression. At our house, preparations for the big day began about a week before, or maybe just a little bit earlier, as 3 young children began fashioning colored paper chains for the Christmas tree. The only real advanced preparation had been the baking of the fruitcake. Mama didn't care at all for fruitcake, really preferring what she called her nut and raisin cake. But Daddy just loved fruitcake. So there was always a fruitcake. The cake was baked just as soon as possible after candied fruit became available in the stores down on Howe Street. It was baked in a very large aluminum pan, which we call the dish pan, for several hours in a very slow oven. After it had been removed from the pan and cooled completely, it was soaked in some red wine, which Granddaddy Elisha had made on the farm out home at Supply and brought to us. The cake was then wrapped in cheesecloth and transferred to a tall lard can and set aside until time to cut it weeks later. The week before Christmas was a very busy one for Mama and Daddy, but especially Mama because Daddy still had to run the sawmill and could not be home much. They had to find time to sneak away together from 3 nosy children and go downtown, this time to the stores on Moore Street, where they could find some simple and inexpensive toys to put under the tree. Sometimes there was just enough money to go to Wilmington to buy the toys, but not often. Once the toys were purchased, hidden away, a trip must be made to Supply for the fresh ham, some extra sweet potatoes, and a couple of big fat hens. After that was accomplished, the cooking began in earnest. Apple and potato pies were baked and stored in the pie safe on the back porch. Later, a lemon meringue pie, a jelly cake or jelly roll, and a chocolate layer cake would sit there too, awaiting all the hungry guests who would be dropping by sooner or later. The hens were plucked and singed to remove all the feathers and then slow roasted to a lovely golden brown. Mama had been saving cornbread all week from the extra that she had baked or fried, and now it was made into dressing with onions, sage, and chicken broth. Usually she added oysters because it made the dressing more tasty. However, Mama insisted on Lockwood's Folly oysters because she declared they were simply the best. This, of course, could have been because she and Daddy grew up eating oysters from Lockwood's Folly River. So Daddy would go up to supply for the oysters to be used in the dressing and extra ones for roasting in the fireplace or sometimes even in the backyard. The tree was always a cedar cut from the banks of one of the creeks near town. Trees along the creek banks were plentiful and free to anyone for chopping and cutting. When Daddy brought the tree home, he placed it in a tub of wet sand and left it on the porch until time to drape the tub with a bed sheet and place the decorations on the branches. The tree decorations, which had been lovingly stored away from last Christmas, were brought out and hung on the tree. Most of these were exquisite, and they were shiny glass baubles. Each year, if funds were available, 2 or 3 new ones might be purchased at Woolworth's or Cress's in Wilmington, and they would be added to the collection. There were also strands of tinsel and lots of silvery icicles to drip from the tree branches. Last of all, our paper chain creations were added. We had no electric tree lights in those Great Depression days. Decorations for the living room consisted of sprigs of cedar placed behind the pictures on the walls and folded paper bells, which were opened and hung from the light fixture in the center of the room. The mantel was banked with greenery and red candles, but the candles were never lighted because of the fear of fire. Toys were simple and inexpensive. Small wind-up toys such as the bucking mule, which my brother received, and which was a family favorite for many years. There were small dolls nestled in little baskets for my sister and me, marbles, scissors, crayons, and small boxes of chocolate were often under the tree for us. When possible, there were also books and paper dolls as well. However, I disdained the paper dolls, preferring instead those that I could cut from the large Sears and Roebuck catalog, which were always available. Santa left all of this bounty unwrapped under the tree. He usually came on Christmas Eve while the children waited in another room, listening to the rustle of paper and the muted voices of our parents, and sometimes we were sure we heard Santa himself. And then the doors were open and we were allowed to rush in and claim our treasures and to play until Mama called a late bedtime on us. By giving us gifts on Christmas Eve, Mama and Daddy were able to get a bit more of much-deserved extra sleep on Christmas morning before the guests started arriving. Oranges were a special treat at Christmas. Bananas could be purchased at the stores most of the time, and we always had apples and pears from the old home place. But oranges appeared for us only at Christmas. Mama would sit in her wooden rocker near the fireplace with the kids around her feet, and as she peeled and sectioned each orange and fed it to us, slice by slice, she told us funny stories about the family and experiences she had in her growing up years. We loved the stories as much as we loved the oranges. Christmas afternoon brought lots of visitors. Food was shared and laughter resounded throughout the house. The big meal was served around noon, but the nibbling and tasting went on all afternoon and into the evening as friends and relatives stopped by to bring little gifts or just to visit on this extra day of leisure from daily tasks and worries. All too soon, the happy occasion was over, and 3 tired kids and their parents, who were probably even more tired, went to bed. The day after Christmas meant a special trip out home to visit relatives there before everybody had to settle back into work and school routines. So we have heard Susie's story about a Depression Christmas. Our Christmas this year in 2020 will be very different from most of us, but we wish you a very Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year in 2021. Thanks for joining us today.
Hello, my name is Charles Drew. I am the fire chief for the City of Southport Fire Department. I'm also a native of Southport, born and raised here, and fourth generation firefighter with the City of Southport Fire Department. One of my fondest memories as a child, my grandfather, Billy Drew, being a very active member of the Southport Fire Department, the beginning of December would get dressed every year in his fireman's uniform, and we would head down to the fire station to ride on the fire trucks because Southport Fire Department would escort and bring Santa Claus to town. This tradition, the best we can find and recollect, began under Chief Orman Leggett's administration as chief of the fire department. Chief Leggett and his wife never had children, but always loved children. And it's said that Chief Leggett got together and decided that they would escort Santa Claus to Southport on a fire truck. And that tradition started many, many years ago. We know for a fact that Chief Greg Cumby, who was fire chief before I was put in as the chief of Southport Fire Department, in the early 1950s as a child rode on top of the fire trucks and escorted Santa Claus to town when his father was a fireman. So we've got a strong tradition that's probably, we know of now, is about at least 80 years old. It could be even older than that. And it's a tradition that I don't know of any other fire department in North Carolina participates with the fire department escorting Santa Claus to town. And the main goal was to provide a kid's dream of always being able to ride on a real fire truck. And, well, today we have the Light Up the Night Christmas Parade in conjunction with Winterfest in Southport, North Carolina, which is a week set aside for winter activities and Christmas activities. And we have mixed a lot of tradition in with Winterfest. And the fire truck parade is still a great part of a family tradition in Southport. And on Friday of that week, Winterfest culminates with the fire truck parade. It has evolved. Today, the Light Up the Night Christmas Parade, we have floats and bands and antique cars and marching troops, and then we still have about 35 fire trucks. The parade started with 2 fire trucks almost 80 years ago, but today has about 35 pieces of equipment from Southport Fire Department, and then we also invite other fire departments from the county to participate because we have so many children that want to ride fire trucks. We try to accommodate all of them and bring that fire equipment into town to do that. So this tradition has evolved into a bigger parade with a lot more participants than what it started 80-some years ago. However, the main goal and the main theme is to make sure that the kids get to ride the fire trucks, and we still make sure that tradition is held fast in Southport. Another great tradition when we escort Santa Claus into town is that Santa Claus has always visited Ocean Trail Convalescent Center, has always visited Dozier Memorial Hospital, the emergency room, and patients on the floor, bringing some holiday cheer and a smile to their face. People that are sick and shut in, we make house visits, and we've always made sure that tradition has been kept up in Southport with Santa Claus visiting those that are in the hospital and that are sick. Another tradition of the Southport Fire Department has been an annual banquet at the end of every year. They've had it many different places. The Ship's Chandler, before it was Ship's Chandler and it was Max Cafe. Then it was transferred and had at the Sand Fiddler Seafood Restaurant, and then the Southport Community Building, and it's evolved and been other places. And we're so thankful to be able to continue that tradition in Southport, honoring our volunteers and our retired firefighters as well. through the years. So these Southport traditions we hold very dear and near to our heart. This year, in uncertain times with the pandemic and COVID, things are going to be a little bit different. But you know what? Santa Claus is still coming to town. We may not be able to have the Light Up the Night Christmas parade this year and gather at the fire station with a large crowd, but we're going to be dividing our district up into a grid and advertising Santa Claus coming through your neighborhood on a Model T fire truck or one of our fire apparatus. That's been another tradition since our Model T, 1922 Model T fire truck has been restored since the early 90s. It's been very integral part of Christmas in Southport by bringing Santa Claus into town and parading him through the streets of Southport. It's so wonderful to see today grandparents bringing their grandchildren to fire headquarters to get on the fire trucks, and they tell me, Chief, I used to ride the fire trucks when I was a kid. So it's great. That was one of my greatest memories growing up, is coming to the firehouse with my granddad and getting on top of the fire truck and parading through town, bringing Santa Claus to town. So Southport is a strong and a resilient city full of history and tradition, and a Southport Christmas is the best Christmas that you will ever be able to have, celebrating it with family and friends and remembering these great traditions and these great historical events. So even in uncertain times, I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas from Southport Fire Department, from Chief Drew and his family, and a very happy New Year. Please stay safe.
Hey everybody, welcome to Bald Head Island, North Carolina. My name is Travis Gilbert. I'm the Educator and Collections Coordinator for the Old Baldy Foundation. And we want to thank everyone for this opportunity to bring an old-timey Southport Christmas to you. We are here to talk about how Christmas was celebrated at the Keepers Cottages located at Cape Fear Light Station. Now, Cape Fear Light Station is missing from the horizon behind me. What you see are the three 1903 Keepers Cottages that house the three lightkeepers that operated Cape Fear Light Station. Cape Fear Light Station would have been poking out beyond that ridgeline on the horizon. From 1903 to 1958, Cape Fear Light Station warned mariners of the dangers of frying pan shoals, extending a little over 20 to sometimes 30 miles off of the pitch of Cape Fear. You may know it as the southern terminus of the graveyard of the Atlantic. So can you picture a 150-foot light tower behind me flashing, warning mariners of the dangerous graveyard of the Atlantic off Bald Head Island shores? Now, this compound behind me that has survived, the three Keepers Cottages, are known locally as Captain Charlie's Station, because one man served for 30 years as principal keeper of Cape Fear Light Station. His Christian name was Charles Norton Swan, but we all know him as Captain Charlie. And Captain Charlie was afforded 2 assistant keepers to help him with his duties and responsibilities in operating and maintaining Cape Fear Light Station for the benefit of those mariners offshore. Now, the families would have celebrated many a Christmas here at the Keepers Cottages, and one Christmas was extra special. It was the Christmas of 1911. It was the last Christmas that Captain Charlie and his first wife spent here at Bald Head Island. The next year in 1912, the family actually moved over to Southport, where they maintained a residence on West Street. And this cottage behind me just served the family and Captain Charlie when they were on location for the job. Now, this special Christmas of 1911 is best described by historian Ethel Herring in her book, Captain Charlie's and the Lights of the Lower Cape Fear. This is a phenomenal book, and Ethel Herring uses the information in this book as a way to bring to life the families of the lightkeepers that called Bald Head Island home. And much of that information is gleaned from the eldest daughter of Captain Charlie, a lady named Margaret Swan, later after her marriage, Margaret Swan Hood. Again, the eldest daughter of Captain Charlie. And through various interviews and a long tradition of oral histories, Ethel Herring was able to piece together the life of Captain Charlie and his family through learning what their lifestyle was like from Margaret Swan Hood's memories. So I'm going to read a passage of what Christmas was like out here on Bald Head Island behind me at Captain Charlie's station. She says that no date on the calendar brought more joy to the Swan family and the others who lived on the island than Christmas. Days ahead were time for celebration, and Captain Charlie went in his boat to Southport for extra supplies. Food was abundant. They had fresh pork and turkeys weighing 25 to 30 pounds that were cooked the day before. Cakes and pies were baked and put in screened-in pie safes. There were a lot of bugs on Bald Head, even sometimes at Christmas. Bald Head Island had an abundant supply of cedar trees. The Swans went to the forest to find the best tree of them all for Christmas. They also cut holly and heavily laden with bright berries. Grandmother Pizarro, this is Captain Charlie's wife, Marie Pizarro, her mother, Grandmother Pizarro sent a big box of decorations for the tree each year from Charleston, where she lived. On Christmas morning, there was a reading of the story of the birth of Christ from the Bible and the singing of carols. Though Captain Charlie did not smoke or drink, he had an open house for the men of the old life-saving station and his own assistants. The life-saving station is a precursor to the United States Coast Guard, and the original station was actually just beyond that horizon on Bald Head Island's East Beach. So if the lighthouse that Captain Charlie operated were warning mariners of the dangers of frying pan shoals, if those mariners were ever to get into trouble out on the shoals, the life-saving servicemen would go out and perform a heroic rescue to bring those mariners back to safety. So the life-saving servicemen were just as much of a part of this community as the lightkeepers and their families, and it only seems natural that they would be a part of this Christmas celebration in 1911. So they says, for these life-saving servicemen at this open house, cake and coffee and port wine were served, and good cigars were given to the men. Some had to stay on watch, so the men took turns coming to visit with Captain Charlie and his wife. Now, specifically, in 1911, there was a community tree for the 7 families on the island from the life-saving station crew and the lightkeepers. Each person gave Mrs. Burns' daughter $1. And Mrs. Burns' daughter refers to Edgar Burns, who was one of the assistant lightkeepers serving with Captain Charlie here at Cape Fear Light Station. So that assistant keeper's daughter, Mrs. Burns' daughter, was given $1 from each member of the community. And she went across to Southport and bought a gift for every resident on Bald Head Island. These she beautifully wrapped and put under the community Christmas tree up here on the horizon behind me. When the big night arrived, there was much excitement. Word was whispered around that there was an extra surprise in store, a secret that caused great speculation. The Bible story was read, there was singing followed by the distribution of gifts. Next, the grand surprise. Grandmother Pizarro from Charleston sent a big box of fireworks that year in 1911. Then the fun really began. So it doesn't take much for the imagination to create this image of Christmas behind us, concluded in the year 1911 with fireworks illuminating the horizon out here on the pitch of Cape Fear on Bald Head Island. So from everyone here at the Old Baldy Foundation, North Carolina's oldest standing lighthouse, we wish you and your families a most Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh. Over fields we go, laughing all the way. Bells on bobtails ring, making spirits bright. What fun it is to ride and sing a sleighing song tonight. Oh, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child. Holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace.
We hope you have enjoyed our Southport Christmas past. We want to thank all of the folks who were instrumental in making this video happen. We want to thank them for putting the pieces of the puzzle into the box. And we want to especially thank Julie Newton for taking those pieces out of the box, putting them together to complete this video. Julie, we really appreciate your support. We appreciate your artistic talents, and you have certainly made your family proud in continuing the artistic abilities that have been provided to our community. We also want to thank the viewers. We appreciate you for celebrating with us today and for watching our videos in the past. If you're not a member of the Southport Historical Society, we welcome you and encourage you to please join and help us preserve our past. We would like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and prosperous New Year. And we want to remind you to keep the memories near always.